Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're switching things up a bit. We're talking about Nigeria, a country with a rich history, a vibrant culture, and apparently a whole lot of countries that aren't exactly rolling out the red carpet for its travelers. As of March 27, 2025, several countries have implemented stricter visa regulations, making it more challenging for Nigerians to travel internationally. Some of them you might expect. Others? Let's just say you might want to buckle up for this one. If you're a Nigerian traveler, or simply someone who appreciates news that makes you think, wait, what? Grab your passport, settle in, and let's delve into this topic together. Alright, let's start with the big one, shall we? The United States. A country that prides itself on being a beacon of freedom and opportunity, the land of opportunity, the melting pot, the place where dreams supposedly come true. But for some, those dreams are becoming increasingly out of reach, especially if you're from Nigeria. Yes, the place that's been making it harder and harder for Nigerians to visit. Now, this isn't exactly new, right? Remember the travel ban? That controversial policy that sparked protests and debates across the globe? Yeah, that whole banning people from certain countries thing? It was a big deal, and for good reason. Turns out, it's still a thing.
We're hearing several stories now emerging of travelers stopped at border entry points despite allegedly having valid visa documents. Border agents ultimately having the final say, with them being turned away as a real possibility. But in recent months, several Germans, British, and Canadians have been reportedly locked up in ICE detention centers up to several weeks at a time, either for answering questions incorrectly or experiencing visa issues.
The remnants of that policy continue to affect travelers today. See, back when the Trump administration was running the show, they were tossing around this idea of a travel ban that would affect something like 43 countries. It was a sweeping measure that caused a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. And guess what? Nigeria was on that list. A country with a rich culture and vibrant community suddenly facing barriers to entry. Now, it wasn't the full-blown ban that hit places like Iran, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen. But it was still significant enough to cause concern. But still, not exactly the kind of welcome mat you want to see when you're trying to visit the Statue of Liberty, the symbol of freedom and hope, now overshadowed by restrictive policies. And look, I get it. Every country has the right to control its borders. It's a matter of national security and sovereignty. But when you start singling out entire nationalities, it starts to feel a little, shall we say, discriminatory. It sends a message that some people are less welcome than others. It's like saying, we love your jollof rice, but we're not so sure about the people who make it. Not cool, America. This kind of selective exclusion undermines the very principles the country was built on. So, while the US continues to celebrate its diversity and cultural richness, it's important to remember that true freedom means welcoming everyone, not just a select few. Let's hope for a future where the land of the free truly lives up to its name. Next up, we're heading south, way south, to the land of Nelson Mandela, Biltong, and complicated relations with Nigeria. You see, the relationship between these two African giants is like a roller coaster ride, full of ups and downs, twists and turns. Yeah, when it comes to South Africa, restrictions. It's about a whole history of tension and, dare I say, a little bit of rivalry. This rivalry isn't just recent. It goes back decades, rooted in political, economic, and social dynamics. Nigeria and South Africa, they're like the Beyoncé and Rihanna of Africa. Both have their unique styles, massive followings, and undeniable influence on the continent. Both powerhouses, both super successful, both with a whole lot of influence extends beyond borders, shaping music, fashion, and even business trends across Africa. But sometimes, things get a little competitive. Whether it's in sports, entertainment, competition is fierce and often spills over into other areas. And that competition, it spills over into everything, including travel. The rivalry has led to stringent travel policies and visa requirements that can make it challenging for countries to visit each other. We're talking visa restrictions. We're talking expulsions. We're talking about that time back in 2012 when South Africa straight up deported 125 Nigerians. Some issues with their yellow fever certificates. This incident was just one of many that highlight the ongoing tension and the complexities of their relationship. Now, let's talk about Libya. Remember that time the Nigerian football team went to Libya for an Africa Cup of Nations qualifier? Yeah, about that. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Picture this. The team lands at Al Abrak Airport, ready to represent their country, only to be met with delays. And not just any delays, we're talking major, head-scratching, are we ever going to play this game? Delays. Turns out there were some logistical issues, and by logistical issues, I mean it was like someone forgot to tell the airport that the entire Nigerian football team was coming to town. The players were stuck waiting and waiting and waiting some more. Chapter 4, Kenya, Visa Drama at the Gate. From one East African nation to another, let's talk about Kenya. Now, Kenya is a beautiful country, known for its wildlife, its beaches, and unfortunately for some not-so-great experiences for Nigerian travelers. We're talking about those awkward, frustrating, and sometimes downright infuriating moments when things go wrong with visas. Take, for instance, that incident at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. A Nigerian passenger was all set to board their flight, ticket in hand, dreams of safari adventures dancing in their head, when bam, denied boarding. Seems there was a problem with their visa. Chapter 5. The European Union, where the visa process is an Olympic sport. Okay, folks, buckle up because we're about to enter the Schengen area. This is the place where the dream of a borderless Europe comes to life, allowing you to hop from Paris to Berlin to Rome without a second thought. That magical land of 26 European countries where you can travel freely with just one visa. Imagine the convenience, the freedom, the sheer joy of exploring so many cultures with such ease. Sounds great, right? Except when you're Nigerian, and suddenly that one visa feels like it requires climbing Mount Everest, solving a Rubik's Cube, and negotiating a peace treaty all at the same time. It's like an Olympic sport, but with more paperwork and less glory. See, for Nigerian travelers, getting a Schengen visa can be a real odyssey. It's not just a matter of filling out a form and waiting. It's a journey filled with hurdles and hoops to jump through. We're talking about mountains of paperwork, interviews that feel like interrogations, and this constant feeling that you have to prove you're not going to, just decide to move to Paris and start selling baguettes on the black market. It's a process that tests your patience, your resolve, and sometimes even your sanity. Chapter 6. The United Kingdom. Mind the gap in your visa application. Speaking of Europe, let's hop across the channel and pop over to the United Kingdom. Now, the UK has always had a bit of a reputation for being, shall we say, particular about who they let in. But for Nigerians, it often feels like they've taken that particularity to a whole new level. Forget about just showing up with your passport and a smile. Oh no, my friend. Getting a UK visa as a Nigerian traveler is a serious undertaking. We're talking about a level of scrutiny that would make Sherlock Holmes blush. Chapter 7. Saudi Arabia, Hajj, and Heartache. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about Saudi Arabia. For many Muslims around the world, including millions of Nigerians, making the pilgrimage to Mecca is a once-in-a-lifetime dream. But for some Nigerian travelers, that dream can turn into a bit of a logistical nightmare. It's not that Saudi Arabia is specifically targeting Nigerians, not at all. It's more that the sheer volume of pilgrims every year can put a strain on the system, and that can lead to, you guessed it, visa delays. Chapter 8. The United Arab Emirates, Dubai Dreams, Deferred. Next up, we're jetting off to the land of glittering skyscrapers, luxury shopping, and, well, sometimes complicated visa situations for Nigerians. Yes, we're talking about the United Arab Emirates. Now, the UAE has always been a popular destination for Nigerians, whether it's for business, tourism, or just to experience the glitz and glamour of Dubai. But in recent years, the UAE has become a bit more, shall we say, discerning about who they let in. We're talking about visa restrictions, folks. Chapter 9. China, the Great Wall of Visa Requirements. Let's hop over to Asia now, shall we? Specifically to China, the land of the Great Wall, delicious dumplings, And for some Nigerian travelers, a whole lot of visa headaches. See, getting a Chinese visa can be a bit like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. It's not impossible, but it sure ain't easy. For starters, there's the paperwork. And trust me, when it comes to paperwork, the Chinese government doesn't mess around. We're talking about forms upon forms, documents upon documents, and enough red tape to circle the globe twice. And then, of course, there's the interview. Chapter 10, Ghana, Brotherly Love with a Side of Border Control. And last but not least, let's wrap things up with a little trip to Ghana. Now, you might think that being fellow West African nations, Nigeria and Ghana, would have this whole travel thing down pat. And for the most part, they do. But even in the spirit of Pan-African solidarity, sometimes things get a little complicated. See, Ghana, like any other country, has its own set of rules and regulations when it comes to immigration. And while they generally welcome Nigerians with open arms, there have been times when they've tightened up their border controls and visa policies. Outro safe travels, hopefully. And there you have it, folks, 10 countries where Nigerian travelers might encounter a few more hurdles than usual. Look, I know it's not always easy out there for the Nigerian traveler, but hey, at least you're prepared, right? Knowledge is power, and now you've got the power to navigate these tricky travel situations like a pro. So, the next time you're planning a trip, do your research, make sure your paperwork is in order, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. And hey, if all else fails, there's always the option of exploring the beautiful and diverse destinations right there in Nigeria. Safe travels!